lockdown version of home games. Actually, they've all been the lockdown version of home games. After the first Leafs game of the season, super agent Jeff Jackson, he represents Connor McDavid and Austin Matthews, sent out a tweet saying about the cross-checks that Austin Matthews was getting. Why does the NHL not protect its superstars like the NFL does its quarterbacks? This is ridiculous. Paraphrasing. Rick Zamperin, does he have a point? Or if you start to protect your superstars, you are changing everything that is about hockey?
Well, yes and no. Number one, optically, it doesn't really look good, especially coming from, the agent of a superstar player. And let's be honest, it's not the player who's complaining about this. It is the agent. But in the same sense, cross-checking is a penalty. The last time I checked the NHL rulebook, it's just never called or is very rarely called. And the only time it is when a player is kind of near the boards or it's a very dangerous situation. But, guys for eons now have been whacked and hacked in front of the net. And in some cases, rightfully so. The defenseman's trying to do their job, trying to clear a path so the goalie can see the puck. You know what? I think there's a dangerous line for when the NHL wants to protect superstar players and not everyone else. Goalies are a different category. They're on no man's land. But I think the NHL or whatever this is going to amount to, I got to be very careful treading forward.
Steve?
I'm 98% in agreement with Jeff. He's one of the most intelligent guys I've ever met in the game, and people might remember that he played for the Hamilton Steelhawks. He's right in principle. NHL has always been bad, and it goes way back. They don't take care of their superstars. You take a look at how the NBA got big. It's by featuring superstars. In football, we're now protecting the quarterbacks way more than we used to be. I don't think you can allow that kind of cross-check. There's lots of ways to move guys. Move guys out in front of the net, cross-check, first time, penalty. No, hey, stop it.
Once again, we tinker. Once again, people are making a lot of noise in the National Hockey League. This is the game. And this is the only sport that where generally people have star players, have people protecting them. Hence why the Maple Leafs went out and got a Wayne Simmons. So when people take liberty with their star players, there is always someone to protect them. The players in the National Hockey League, unlike any other sport, protect themselves. And the less we can have referees involved in the game, the better, in my opinion.
I did not know that Bubba was going to rise to the Don Cherry bait, but I don't disagree with them. One of the things that the NHL has always had is, as Bubba says, the ability for players to have an intimidation factor, that if you're going to do that to my guy, you better be ready to defend yourself. We don't really have that anymore. And I'm not arguing to go back to the days of bench clearing brawls and goons on the ice every shift and drop the gloves off the face off and all the rest. But Rick, that nuclear deterrent that, Ben Sherratt, he did fight once with Wayne Simmons, but you want to keep doing that, you're going to have a fight again and again and again. That's not, to me, the worst thing in the world in this particular case.
No, and self-policing in the NHL works to a certain extent. But my point is, listen, if you're going to call a cross-checking penalty against a Ben Sherratt and an Austin Matthews, you better call a cross-checking penalty against Zach Bogosian on, whatever player he's going to cross-check. It doesn't have to be a superstar player. A penalty should be a penalty no matter who the infraction is for or against.
I agree. I think this argument of protecting players and that's fine. It'll kind of go on, but you can't say, hey, I'm not arguing for this because it'll go there again. If you ease off on it, cannot let players protect themselves, especially in this era when teams, and it's going to go on for a long time, when teams are divided into half, top half of their lineup, bottom half of the lineup.
But Bubba, why?
No way. You can't give the bottom half of the lineup that much power in this game. It's a game of entertainment.
Bubba O'Neill, why is it not called a penalty? We have now referees calling the tickiest, tackiest hooking penalties. If your stick just gets into a guy's hands and doesn't really impact anything, and then you get referees saying, but that cross-check that, as Rick says, is a penalty, they don't call it. Why not just call the rule book and you don't have to worry about any of this?
Because the game would slow down and then we would have multiple guys in the penalty box and the game would never be ending. And we'd be looking at 3-hour and 10-minute hockey games. I mean, last time I checked, this is a physical hockey game played very much in a sense, kind of like a lacrosse, where there are people that are going to take sticks and hack at each other. And when we do see these ticky-tack hooking and holding penalties, we all complain. and say the referees are too involved in the game. Last time I checked, when you go in front of the goaltender to screen him, you're going to take some type of physical abuse. And then it's taken one step further by an agent. I hate when agents talk. I'm sorry. I don't care who likes who here and who's friends with who here. But at the end of the day, when agents are doing too much talking, I don't like to hear it. We hear it in baseball with the super agents talking. And then the one day later, we hear Austin Matthews on a Zoom call complaining that he's not getting calls. It was this one game. One game has been played, and already you've got beefing off.
It drove Mario Lemieux out of the game. End of story.
What do you think?
Hold on, Steve. You're talking about a totally different time and a totally different type of hockey. And
go back there easily.
As much as I loved him, as much as I loved him, was a bit of a whiner. And I'm sorry, he had a bad back and all of that kind of stuff. But he's doing a little bit of whining. And
you sure tuned in to watch the guy.
Yeah, if you call a penalty on cross-checking all the time, I think cross-checking would disappear, not relatively quickly,
exactly.
But towards the end of the year, certainly in playoff time.
Yeah.
What do you think? You watching? Bring back the enforcer, allow more enforcers, call the rules by the letter of the law, let it go, let them hack themselves out, protect the superstars. Comment down below. We'd love to hear from you. The last number of years, we have seen a number of enormous NBA superstars who have signed contracts to play with a team, decide they no longer want to play with that team, demand a trade, and they get it. Bubba O'Neill, this has always been the case in sports that guys have asked for trades or wanted out, but it seems to be becoming more and more of an issue in the NBA. Do the players now, we don't want to go back to the days when athletes had no power, but are NBA players getting, especially the superstars, getting too much power?
Well, it's amplified in the NBA, no doubt, because of the Players Association's deal with the NBA. In fact, it's about a 50-50 split. So you're going to have more power from the NBA in terms of players than you will have with the owners compared to other sports. But mind you, and I know you're right. I mean, we are seeing this. I mean, we have a player right now in the NBA that has missed 5 straight games. No one knows where he is. He was seen on a Zoom call with a girl from Sex and the City raising money for political reasons. Kyrie Irving, we don't know what's going on with him, but he's always been kind of a wacky dude. The James Harden thing is, I think, where you're going here.
Well, James Harden, Anthony Davis, as you say, Kyrie Irving being out. I mean,
well, really, right now, obviously, you have recent bias. Obviously, would lead to James Harden, and a guy that generally stopped playing too. Toxic situation. But believe me, I'll tell you this right now. This is a different generation of athletes. They think differently. We've seen it, and we're beginning to see it in Winnipeg. Patrik Laine wants out of doesn't want to be a Jet anymore. I think this is just the way sports is going.
Rick,
I don't. The question I ask is it better for the league? Is the league in a better position when players do this? When we have these superstar teams, and the NBA is probably the king of all, superstar kind of lineups. And I think the answer is both yes and no. Yes, because we get to see 2 or 3 superstars of the game on the same team, and it's they're fun to watch. But in the same sense, they're playing a team that is garbage because they don't have any superstar players because they've all congregated on 1 or 2 or 3 different teams. So on one hand, it's great. On one hand, especially for the team that are losing these guys, man, it just sucks.
I think basketball is always going to, as Bubba points out, going to be a bit of an anomaly here because of its structure and how important the superstars are to it. So it's probably going to go that way. In the other sports, I don't think it's a worry. There's a bit of a copycat effect there. We've always had players wanting to get out of town, but because each individual player, other than the quarterback, say, and the goalies, can't have as huge an impact as they do in basketball. If they want to get out, you usually get a trade for trade kind of thing, or you get your problem for my problem, and you see teams doing it. So if teams can do it, like they don't like the way that this guy's playing, or they don't like the way that guy's playing, so you trade for my problem, I trade for yours, even if it's a personal problem, not just a performance problem. If the teams can do it, I think the players should be, whatever power they have to do that, which is just basically to say it out loud or to withhold their services in some kind of ways. I think you almost have to do that. But at the same time, I think the local fans should be able to, and the players shouldn't complain of it, that's ridicule them to death on social media, where so many players care about it. Okay, that's fair too. If that's
to the point, Steve.
If all things are fair, that's fair.
To the point where some players take out burner accounts to shoot back at the
That's right. That's right.
One of the, and the problem I have with this whole thing is not players moving teams. Free agency is a negotiated right they have. It's the right in every sport. If you want to go, if Kevin Durant wants to leave Oklahoma City and go to the Lakers or Golden State, I mean, that's fine. It's the guys who sign these unbelievably incredible contracts in good faith, and the team signs them in good faith. And then when things aren't going quite the way they want, they say, "Oh, I got to get out of here." Look, if you were going to sign that contract, and I'm not talking just NBA, I'm talking any sport, any athlete. We're just talking about the NBA because it's front and center right now. If you sign a contract in good faith, you should honor that contract and stick around and play it out. And then if you want to leave, you leave.
What about the other way? I mean, it's not written in that way, but if somebody goes because they want to play in Florida because the weather's nice, Florida decides they want to get a really good player from Calgary, so they trade him there.
I tell you what, the one thing, I mean, I've gotten used to this almost with the way sports is going and the way athletes are and demands and really not fulfilling the length of your contract. I'll tell you the one thing that I find unusual, because I think I try to relate this back to normal life, is what Deshaun Watson is going through. We're hearing this, that he wasn't consulted when a different general manager was hired or a different head coach is hired. And we're hearing this from players sometimes. Well, the superstar players, well, I really wasn't consulted or didn't give the rubber stamp on that head coach hiring or the general manager hiring. Believe me, and I like my boss at where I work, but wouldn't we all love to have control over who's our bosses? That to me seems very unusual.
Is that in his job description? Co-general manager?
No, shouldn't be. His job description is the X and O's and scoring touchdowns and winning football games, not, helping decide who should be the next coach or the next GM or the next front office personnel. When they drafted Deshaun Watson, did they say, hey, 5 years from now, you're going to help pick our next GM? No, and that shouldn't be a discussion. And I'm not sure how much legacy comes into the mind frame of today's athlete. When I think of James Harden, I think of, one of the best players of his generation, but there's a but there. And, most superstar players, whatever the sport, don't have a but. Some do, and it's probably because of their off field or off ice or off whatever, activities. James Harden certainly is a big but, B-U-T, ... And I think his legacy is somewhat tarnished.
It's a fascinating one because if the guy is moving to your team, you're thrilled with it and you're delighted if he demands to come to your team. If he's leaving your team, as I think Rick said, then it sucks if your team is always on the outs looking in. And look, the Toronto Raptors fans went through this a lot of times. What do you think? Are you okay with players demanding this, or do you say no, play out your deal and then go if you want? Let us know down below. Time for the 1 minute debate here on Home Games today. And here's how it works. I'm going to give each of these guys, they don't know what the topic is going to be. I'm going to give them a topic, and off their cuff, they have 1 minute to make their case. That's how it works. We're going to go to Steve Milton first. Steve, any era, any decade, any century, any sport, any gender, any whatever you like, you are going out for beer. You can go out for a beer or a coffee with one athlete.
Does that have to be an athlete? Can it be a coach?
Anyone in sports, if you wish. Who is that person? You got 1 minute. 3, 2, 1, go.
Right now, I'm torn between these two players. Paul Molitor, who I have been out for beers with, and I'm afraid too many times to talk about, because he's a very intelligent guy, had much broader interest than most people could, and knew the game of baseball inside and out, and really appreciated people and really appreciated you as a person. But I'm going to go with John Herdman, the coach of the men's national team, because I feel that he knows more about soccer, or as much about soccer as anybody in this country. What he did with the women's team, the talks we had with him just when it was 3 or 4 of us with him, and the erudition there, and what you learned in such a short time, and his respect for you, and also his respect for your lack of knowledge as a non-soccer person and in a non-soccer country, really. So I'm going to, and I think he's be even better on a one-on-one where you might have a little beer there and go on for an hour or two. So I'm going to go with John Herdman, of the men's national team.
Of all the athletes and coaches in the history of sports since the earth was formed, John Herdman.
That's right now. That's right now.
You're going to have to send John a copy of this because he's going to give you interviews and exclusives forever now that you chose him over any other living or dead person. All right.
So this is living or dead.
Obviously, he's just setting up for his next book.
Well, I don't know. Does John Herdman figure skate?
No. I'd love to write about soccer.
All right, Rick Zamperin wearing the Masters green jersey today. Will it be a Masters or a golf athlete? You got a minute. 3, 2, 1, go.
It is no one associated with the sport of golf, and I'm glad this is living or dead. There are a couple of living guys I'd put on my list, like Danny McManus and Paulus Baldiston, but I have to go with an individual who's no longer with us, who may have been one of the best athletes in his sport still to this day, and one of the best party animals in his sport, maybe all of sports of all time, and that is George Herman Babe Ruth. This guy was a tyrant. He was incorrigible, and he could drink you under the table, over the table, beside the table, through the table, and then he'd, carve the table into a baseball bat and hit a home run later that night. This guy was so, entertaining and amazing in the roaring 20s. Certainly his career spanned into the 30s and even before the 20s. One of the best players of all time. A guy who could, be rambunctious and go out for a late night pop, and then the next day wake up, stumble to the ballpark at Yankee Stadium and hit 3 homers and call it a day. So Babe Ruth is my pick to have a beer with.
Wow. You know what? That was on my list as one of the ones to think about. That's he would have stories.
A beer.
Yeah. Well, a keg. Bubba O'Neill, 1 minute. Who is the athlete that you would want to go out, living or dead, go out for a beer with? Go.
No doubt a difficult question for all of us here, but I'll tell you who I'd like to sit down with. Orenthal James Simpson.
Ooh.
There are many aspects of this man's life that I would love to just pick apart. You're talking about a guy that was huge at USC, Heisman Trophy winner, goes to Buffalo, first to rush for 2,000 yards, does it in 14 games, becomes a huge star. In fact, the first transcendent black superstar that was not just big in sports, but became big in Hollywood, did movies, dated Hollywood stars, and then went over to TV as a broadcaster. And then suddenly we all know what happened after that. I mean, is there anyone that has gone from the highs and lows of life, and then right now, there's this sort of underlining feeling of like O.J. Simpson, the fallen superstar? I don't think there's any more interesting mind that I would like to delve into. A beer with him would be mighty interesting.
Yeah, you know what? I had not thought of that one. Right now, I got to vote for that one as the winner. That is just because of the interest level. You have
an assumption there that he'd actually tell us something, right? So that's the other part of this discussion.
A few beers in. Yeah.
And you know that OJ likes to talk, so you would hear some real interesting stories, I'm sure.
Yeah, you might want to have a tape recorder hidden in your lapel, just in case. All right, I will 3, 2, 1. I thought about Babe Ruth. I thought about all the greatest athletes of their sports of all time. You know what the problem is? Other than with Babe Ruth, most of the greatest athletes are kind of boring. At least they don't say much because they're guarded. They've done so much media. So I kind of steered away from that one. You know what I went with? Honest, in the end, we all had a kid. We all had a hero as a kid. We all had someone that we admired, that we loved, that we wanted to be. If we were playing road hockey or baseball or whatever, we dreamed of being that person. And for me, it was Bernie Parent, the goalie of the Flyers, won 2 Conn Smythe trophies back-to-back, 2 Stanley Cups, 73 and 74. How do you not go with your childhood hero? And he's still alive. And he retweeted one of my tweets a while back, which, small things, but you kind of go, oh, all right, Bernie Parent retweeted me. That's kind of cool. I'll live on that one for all. I would go with Bernie Parent. I don't know what he would say. It would just be rekindling your childhood hero worship, which is kind of cool.
Yeah, well, there's a lot to be said for that. I mean, I think at heart, we all started somewhere in this sport, right? Or in this industry, and that's the love of the sport, and we got it somehow.
Got it from somewhere. And I say, who knows if who knows if it would be interesting? I guess it would, but.
Now, would you want to have that beer when you're a child or when you're now?
If it was when I was a child, it probably in that era probably would have been a Brador.
Yeah, that's true.
The 50.
Let us know what you think of any of these. Who would you put? Who would you go for a beer with? Who would be the one athlete on your list? Living, dead, coach, trainer? Well, look, if you have a choice of anybody in the history of the world and you choose a trainer, we got to talk. You may need to broaden your horizons. But nonetheless, who would you pick? We would love to hear from you. Comment down below. Subscribe down below so that you can be notified every time a home games comes out. We do it every Monday. Love to talk to you next time. Take care.